Your mission's what you do.
Yeah.
Your culture's who you are. I'll say for an individual, your character's who you are. And your brand is how you're perceived.
Yes.
And there's a big disconnect a lot of times between like, well, here's who I am, but they see me as this. And I would argue that's on you. You have the opportunity to build your own brand.
Welcome back to the Badass Leaders Podcast. Today we have another special guest, Jacob Karnes, a business coach and expert in talent development. As the founder of Waves Business Coaching, Jacob helps business owners create high-performing teams that drive success. He's also the author of Master Your First Job, a guide for young professionals looking to accelerate their careers. From leadership strategies to retaining top talent, Jacob is here to share insights that can transform your business. Okay, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're super grateful that you decided to spend time with us today, and we cannot wait to learn and grow with you. So before you forget, take a moment to click that subscribe button to ensure you stay connected with the Badass Leaders community. Okay, are you ready? Let's do it. So join me, Angela Gill-Nelms, on today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast, where I'm joined each week by industry experts for intimate and eye-opening discussions about the challenges and joys facing the leaders of today. Listen in and get ready to scale your company, grow your brand, and unlock your full badass potential. Let's do it. Well, first off, welcome to the Badass Leaders Podcast
Thank
in
you.
the AGN studios.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming to downtown Atlanta on a night in traffic, probably.
You know, I got like 3/4 of the way here in like 15 minutes. I'm in Kennesaw.
Okay.
And then, you know, the last 6 miles was just, it's Atlanta. It's
Are you
45
kidding
minutes.
me?
I'm
Oh
like,
my
you know
gosh.
what? Great audiobook on the way here. I'm listening to Harry Potter for the first time.
Oh,
So-
I was going to ask what's on your audiobook playlist.
I hadn't read fiction since like school.
Okay.
And in the last 2 years, I've read a lot of fiction. And I was like, I've never read Harry Potter.
I
So,
love this. This is
it's great.
hysterical. So are you in the very first Harry Potter book?
I'm on Order of the Phoenix.
Okay,
So
and I don't know
it's
what
number
order
5.
okay,
5 of
yeah.
7. So we're over halfway done. This one's not as good as the last one.
Oh,
But
and your favorite character is?
it's
hard.
Like Harry, I think
Yeah.
it's hard for me to say my favorite character is anyone other than the main character. I
Right.
find myself doing that with most movies, books. It's just like, yeah, it's the hero. You know, it's the main character. That's who it is. Other than him, Dobby's really interesting in the books. He is such a minor character in the movies.
Yeah.
And he does so much more in the books that I had no idea about. So,
Yeah. Which is
Dobby,
why,
there you go.
listeners, we're going to do a little teaser here because we are going to... Jacob, first off, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in a second.
Okay,
We just
yeah.
like dug right
That's
in.
okay.
But we are going to talk about Jacob's book, Master of Your First Job. And so just because you listen to this podcast does not mean that you're off the hook of reading it. So make sure that you actually go on Amazon,
Love it.
purchase it, and read it as well. You can see I've already flagged some
I love
parts
it.
of it. So clearly it did not suck. It was
I'm
great.
glad. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. It doesn't suck. Yeah.
Well, I'm laughing also because I just hit my own microphone after our whole
We'll count.
conversation. We'll count.
I'm at 0 so far, so we'll see if that lasts. I
Okay,
love it.
perfect. Well, Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us why you're here today?
Yeah, I'm Jacob. I have a family of almost 4. We have a baby due in July.
Congratulations.
Beautiful wife Addie, beautiful daughter Jamie. Have a son due in July. We have an Australian Shepherd. He's great. I'm a business coach. I'm an author. I love to help business leaders build their dream team. And so I worked for Chick-fil-A for 10 years. So grateful for the experience I had with Chick-fil-A. I feel like I got to work for one of the best brands, especially when it comes to leadership development in the world. I had a friend on LinkedIn say the other day that the best product Chick-fil-A makes is leaders.
That is so
And
true.
I'm like, yeah, nail on the head. And like copy paste. I'll give you credit if you want. Randy Gravett, he's great. So I'm so grateful for that experience. In June of 23, I started my own business, doing business coaching and kind of doing what I learned at Chick-fil-A. I love to help other business owners and business leaders who have a team get the most out of their talent and bring the best out of their people. And the world is starved for good leaders. I really do believe that.
It is.
And I'm like, that's why you have this podcast.
Yes,
that's why I wrote
this.
my book. That's why I
Yep.
have my business is I want to build better leaders because better leaders make better teams.
Yep.
And so honestly, it's, the pitch is I want to help you build your dream team, but really I work with the leader one-on-one because 90% of the time it really is on them.
Yes, absolutely. And so the thing that is kind of comical about everything you just said, because I've read the book,
Yeah.
I know that Chick-fil-A was not the job that you initially
No,
wanted when you
not
got
initially.
your first job. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I grew up in Metro Atlanta. So everyone's first job was Chick-fil-A. And I didn't want to be a part of it. I felt like it was a little cultish. Kind of is. I'm like, I did it, so I get it. And I played golf in high school. I played golf today. Still love golf. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to work for a golf course. It'd be an easy job, wash some golf carts, get tips from people playing golf. I was in a fluent sport. This will be so easy and great. I applied to 2 golf courses and they didn't call me back. Didn't even get a call back. Played for the team in high school. One of the courses I applied to was like our home course. Like I knew the people there. Didn't even get a call back.
Wow.
And, I'm 16. My parents had, bought me a car. I was paying them for the car. And
They're like, you need to make some money.
I got to make some money.
Right.
And applied to Chick-fil-A and got a call back within 24 hours and had interviewed within 3 or 4 days. And within 2 weeks, I was starting at Chick-fil-A reluctantly. And I stayed there for 10 years. So love Chick-fil-A. It's not the job I wanted. It was the job I needed.
Yep. That's amazing.
Chapter 1, it was an unexpected opportunity that we took advantage of. So I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I was laughing about reading this in the book was when I think it was, I'm not going to get the story correct,
okay.
But the good thing is I know the resident author.
That's right.
And he'll fix me. He'll get all of my references correct. But it was something like, I'm not sure if you were working in the front of the house and then they moved you to the back of the house and you were like, no, I don't want to do that because it's not going to help me grow as a leader. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like front of house, if you're not familiar with, food service industry, everything in front of the door, everything you see is front of the house. And that's where I worked. And I think when you think about Chick-fil-A, you think about the awesome front of house experience, whether it's in the drive-through, the dining room, and like the kind employees, like that's also the front of house. And so even within the restaurant, I looked at that as like, well, that's the area for like the good people. Like,
right.
like,
the cool kids
like
get in the front of the
right,
house.
like the bad people we got in the kitchen and they're not nice enough. So they're in the back and behind the door. We keep them hidden. And about like 6 months into my journey, I've always been extremely driven. And I'm like, I'm going to be a team leader, kind of like our first promotion by a year. Because I'd heard someone else did it and right at a year.
You're like,
and I
game
was
on.
Like, yeah, game on. That's going to be me. I'm going to work really hard. Took a lot of pride in that and thought I had done everything well to that point. And there was a talent gap in the back and they asked me to move to the back. And I'm like, that's for the bad people. I don't know, like what.
What are you not missing about how amazing I am?
You could have gone to someone else about this,
right.
Not me. And so I reluctantly took a job in the back. And actually, my second promotion in the restaurant was because of the experience I got in the back. So my first year at Chick-fil-A was 6 months up front and 6 months in the back. And like, I guess at the 18-month, 2-year mark, my second promotion actually needed both experiences in order to be good for the role of store supervisor is what we called it. And so, again, something that I didn't want to do ended up being a really, really great thing for my second promotion and moving up quickly, which is a goal of mine. And not just for the title, but I really enjoyed the influence. And again, really driven, really competitive. And I liked getting results. That was something I learned early on at Chick-fil-A.
This is interesting. So I have actually been behind the scenes at many Chick-fil-A's because my previous company, we were doing 3D scanning and working on a project with Chick-fil-A. And so one of the things that I love about a secret sauce that Chick-fil-A has is where they have the instructions on what you should do. Like make eye contact, make a connection, do these things. And it's like, okay, this is if you're building a team and you're building an organization, why not put the map for what success is and all the places they're going to see around it as well?
You said you love leadership books.
Yes.
Atomic Habits, James Clear. Make it obvious.
Yes.
Make it obvious. Sidekicks are what those are called, little stickers that are everywhere.
Now I learned a new language today, sidekicks.
My friend Alex Estes came up with them, worked with him at the corporate office. When I met him and found out that he had come up with sidekicks, having spent 7 years in the restaurant, I told him he was like a god.
Yeah.
I was like, Alex, I was like, this is the single greatest training aid that we've ever had in this company. And it's just so cool to be a part of an organization like that where he's just one of a lot of people at the corporate office. And he just happened to have this idea that I think, to your point, made it obvious for 300,000 team members Chick-fil-A has across the world now how to do their job well. Make it obvious. That's an awesome example of Chick-fil-A's training and development and, again, making it easy for team members to do their job.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a difference because listeners, well, a couple of things. One, if you listen to several episodes, I talk a lot about the fact that I hate when companies create these values and just put them on a wall. And and then no one follows them. No. The difference about what this is that I loved when I saw them is, of course, now also when I go, I know what they say.
Yeah, that's
too,
right.
And I'm like, you just made a connection, didn't you? Yeah,
right.
Well done. And or when I see someone, someone who's not doing what they're supposed to do, and I kind of want to go up to them and be like, you're gonna get caught on your cell phone, and you're gonna lose your job.
Once you get on the inside, it's so tough to not. I cannot go to a Chick-fil-A and have a normal experience anymore. I'm always watching with my training eye,
right?
Which it's good and bad, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, there are pros and cons to all of this. Okay, so let's talk about. I want to talk first about the book, and then we're going to get into your leadership coaching that you do. I am a big believer in coaches. I think most great I love this tongue tied words. Words are hard, Angela. Let's talk about this. Most great coaches also have coaches, right?
I have a coach.
Yes, exactly. But let's talk about one of the things that I really loved in the front of your book is this video where you have a free video summary of who this book was for. So tell me about because I was like, I love that it is clear who you wrote. I love that it is clear you wrote this book to help others based off of this. So tell me what inspired you to do that.
I'll go back to James Clear. There's a few things in my book that I stole from a lot of different. I've read a lot of leadership books, and so I'm reading Atomic Habits for the first time in I think 2020. I think it came out in 2019. And at the end of each chapter, he just has a chapter summary with bullet points, and I'm like, this is kind of cheating because I feel like you could kind of read the chapter summaries and not read the book, and you can get the book out just from the chapter summaries. And I'm like, man, but who cares because they've already bought the book. I'm like, he's following his own rule. He's making it obvious. He's trying to build a habit. And so when I wrote the book, I wanted to make it really obvious and really easy to have takeaways and actually take action, because books are nice. I myself have read plenty of books that I'm like, yeah, I read that. I didn't do anything as a result of it. And so, again, for this audience, it was really important to me to actually make an impact because I just saw the value in, it took me 10 years to learn the lesson in the book. And I'm like, man, if people can figure this out at 16, 17, 22 out of college, they're going to get such a big head start. So how can I make it easy for them? And so I have chapter summaries in my book. And the video summary is a really cool way to just what if I can take the book and in 15 minutes be like, you know what, watch this 15-minute video. Maybe you read the book, you put it on the shelf for 2 years, and you're like, oh yeah, I read that book. What was in it? Pull out the video for 15 minutes. Everybody's got 15 minutes to watch something. Right. And something I've had other business owners do too is they've added it to orientation.
Oh, I love that's
I'm
amazing.
Please do it. Please add it to your orientation.
Yes.
It's out there for you to use. It's a free resource. And so they'll play it at orientation. It's just a great hey, here's some cool stuff you can actually practice at this job that's going to help you no matter what you do after this.
And I think that's what we all as leaders, any organization that has solid leaders, there are people who want to help others that are curious. We're going to talk about curiosity later. But those who are curious continue to be lifelong learners.
Right.
And if you can learn from the experience of someone else to speed up your path towards where your next journey is, how beautiful is that, right?
And how often does it, I feel like I've a child now, and I'm even, I don't see this yet, but I remember growing up, it's your parents would tell you something, and they'd tell you it 10 times, and it's whatever. Mom's friend comes along and tells you the same exact thing.
And you're like, that's a great idea.
That's genius. So it's as a boss, it's you tell people something 10 times, and the second it's in a book, you're in a separate resource. It's that was revolutionary. And honestly, none of the stuff in the book is revolutionary. You read it. None of it's new. None of it's the book's good, but it's all stuff I learned from other people, and it's all stuff that, it's everywhere, but try to simplify it down to a specific audience and for a specific purpose. And that's where I think it does a really good job, is it hits a specific audience for a specific purpose and takes a lot of lessons I learned and distills it down for them.
Well, and it's a playbook for success on your first job. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
quite frankly, especially in today, 2025, we all need a playbook for success, especially those entering into the workforce.
Absolutely.
It's a little interesting right now. Okay, so the other thing that I really wanted to talk about is, you've already mentioned it, is the job you didn't want.
Yep.
And we already talked about what the job you did want.
Right.
Do you still want to work at a golf course one day?
I think, like, I thought about when I'm retired, like if I want to go in 3 or 4 days a week and just be like the
you want to be that old guy?
The angry starter, who I'm just kidding. No, I'd love to be outside, so, we'll see.
Okay, I'm trying to remember why I made this flag for myself, Jacob, but it says Chick-fil-A dipping sauce. Any idea?
Yes. So,
okay.
And I was
Remind me.
I
know what it is. It was interview. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this, listeners, this is on page 19 of the book, and it's in the chapter Take Advantage of Unexpected Opportunities.
Yeah.
And I highlighted that the interview question was, if you were to describe yourself as one of Chick-fil-A's dipping sauces, which one would you pick and why? So do you remember what you picked?
I do. This is one of those like core memories of, I'm like, gosh, how do I answer this question and not sound arrogant? And, it's a weird question. I'm 16 years old. I'm at a group interview. So there's a lot of other people who, mostly young people, either, my age, a little bit older. And we get asked the question in a group setting. So you're having to answer also in front of everyone, which dipping sauce would
and then
you
you're
be
like,
and why.
oh, I wanted to say that. Or I
thought it was good. Luckily, no one had my answer. I did have a couple like, barbecue because it's good. And I'm like, well, that wasn't a very good answer. And so I said Chick-fil-A sauce because it's the best sauce and it goes good on anything. Like, it goes good on everything. And so that I want to try my best to be the best employee, and I'll be good wherever you put me.
I'll be good.
So,
as long as you don't put me in the back of the house.
As long as it's not the back. And it turns out they took me seriously and put me everywhere. I got a lot of experience. So, that was my answer.
I love that. So I'm a big Zach sauce person.
I like Zach sauce.
But I think if I were asked that question, and I have not thought this very well, but you didn't think it very well, right? You were
I had
like, you had like 30 seconds
not long.
Right. I think I would have picked ketchup, but it's like one of those, I think it's much like integrity and core values. Like it's a classic staple that like also can go really well. Some people put it on everything as well.
Some people do.
And that it's not fancy or anything. It's just classic, stable, reliable, dependable, and fulfills like those core values, what was needed at that point.
I love it. See, you'd have gotten hired.
Yes.
Congrats.
Yes. Okay, Chick-fil-A. There you go. So going back, though, I did want to comment on your chapter summaries because we were talking about our mutual friend, Scott Wozniak, who is episode 1 of this podcast.
Great episode.
His book, Make Your Brand Legendary. And that was the thing that I loved as well about his book is that he really took this idea of raving fans, which Kendall answered, it's okay. That book is amazing. It's still one of my favorites. Yeah. It was written in 93. So, what is it, 20 or 30 years later that Scott wrote his? I think he wrote his in 2023. And he really distilled in that here are the steps you need to take in order to accomplish this. So, yeah, great
I love
people.
It. Yeah, Scott's great. That book's great. I actually just had him on my podcast and interviewed him about the book. So,
actually, why don't we pivot to this? Tell us about your podcast.
My podcast, Ways Business Coaching. Try to keep the name simple with the business. Really, I have on a lot of subject matter experts and meant for business leaders and owners to help them build and develop a team. So I love interviewing business leaders that do stuff that I don't, and interview them about what they do and how to do it well. And it's a great free resource, and I've had a lot of cool guests on. So,
amazing. So we will put a link to the podcast.
Okay, love it.
And listeners, here's the key. You need to subscribe. Honestly, speaking of subscribing, like 95% of you have not subscribed to this podcast yet.
Like every podcast.
Exactly. Right. It's just like, I pulled it up the other day because I've heard it on Mel Robbins say on her podcast, that stat. And then I was looking at analytics because I was also looking at the age group that is in our followers. And I was like, oh, I also have 95% of the people. What is it with that?
People don't want to commit. They're like, I'm just, now this is like on my feed. No, it's a good thing on your feed. So why not? If you like one, you're probably going to like multiple. We need a lot of
positivity on our feed. That's right. I assume that your podcast is also really motivating and inspiring. So absolutely. So how did you come up with the name Waves Coaching? And what made you decide to make that leap?
So I've been dying to get this question on a podcast because I'll be real honest. I'm eventually going to have, this will be version 1. I'm going to have a great answer one day that's going to make a lot of sense. Here's the real reason is in my friend group chat when I was starting the business, I asked, what's a cool name to put in front of business coaching that we can work on later?
Right.
And then one word answer started floating in the group chat, and I was checking the availability of the domain and to see if any other company names were like it. And someone sent Waves, and I said, that sounds cool. That's available. That's the story. So eventually I'm going to have a really cool story about how business comes in waves and the ups and downs, and I'll have a really buttoned up answer that will be made up. But
we got the authentic one here.
Yeah, the authentic one. So, and that's true. I've thought about it. Even after we said Waves, I was like, yeah, we can definitely use this metaphorically later. Cool graphic stuff you can do with it, but it was available and I liked the name. So
I love it.
There's the authentic answer.
Well, and I think sometimes we can fall into our own personal branding.
Yeah.
I was sharing this with an upcoming guest, Daniel, earlier today. And we were talking about the Badass Leaders podcast. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I kind of fell into this brand of badass about 14 years ago. I started the hashtag Be Brave, Be Badass.
Yeah.
And then slowly over time, people started buying me all these gifts that said badass on it. And thank goodness for Coach Kitch, who is my executive coach, who then said, because the full name of the podcast is Brave Hearts, Brave Conversations, Badass Leaders.
Yeah.
And he was like, Angela, you should just own the badass.
Own it.
Go and buy. So I probably own 20 some plus domains that have the word badass in them.
Smart.
So anyone else that wants to pretend they're badass, they're going to have to buy me.
That's
for the
right.
price.
And the price is going up by the minute.
It's totally going up, right, as you're listening. Okay, let's talk about leadership and business growth. And then we'll tie it in as well with the stuff that you have in the book as well as your coaching, because I want to cover both.
Yeah.
So you emphasize the importance of building a dream team. What are the key elements for an effective team?
We kind of hinted at it earlier, but the number one key element is a really good leader. Mm-hmm. And that's not a secret. There's no shortcut around that. There's no not bettering yourself as the leader and making your team great. So I think it starts with a really phenomenal leader who's growing themselves, growing others, and growing the business in that order. And something I learned at Chick-fil-A.
Okay, can you say the order again?
Yes,
is it memorized?
Growing yourself, growing others, and then growing the business. One of my former bosses, when I was in the restaurant, when I was young and didn't know what I was doing, he said this quote all the time. He said, "Take care of people, and they'll take care of the business." And he practiced what he preached in that. He did some stuff for me personally that was above and beyond his role as a boss and as a leader. And I really do believe that. You take care of people, they will take care of the business. And so starts with a great leader, and great leaders provide clarity. That's kind of my hot take in the leadership space, is I think that is the number one quality of a leader, that when you give your team clarity, you care for them as people, they will be a dream team. And we can go a lot into that of what does clarity look like in a lot of areas. That will be a second book eventually. But good leaders that are growing themselves, growing others, growing the business, and providing clarity for their team, you'll be amazed what your current team can do if they just had clarity.
Absolutely. I think the thing is this shared vision and this shared understanding and shared understanding of, okay, here's our standard operating procedures. We're going to say, go out to Chick-fil-A, we're going to say my pleasure every time, because he heard it. I think he heard it at the Ritz-Carlton. I think that's where it came from, right? Yep. But we're going to do that. And so also that's an example. And the quote that you said about taking care of people, I think that's the original Richard Branson quote.
Okay.
But
I didn't even know.
we should,
There you go.
Katie, you should fact check me and put it in the show notes, or any of the listeners comment if I got that wrong.
Yeah.
But the thing I love about our podcast and our books and our conversations is that really we want people to steal these ideas and
please.
Implement them. Like, go for it.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So the key part is a leader. Now is a great time for me to ask you this question about managers versus leaders. Are you ready to buckle up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So what do you think, Jacob, in your perspective, the difference between a manager and a leader is?
I think managers get a result regardless, or that's the goal, right? Is like a manager is you're managing to a result. I think about the scale of like, are you more results oriented or relationships oriented? I am more of a results oriented person, but as I've had to learn through my career so far is like, you cannot accomplish a result unless you're solo running a business, like with no other people involved, without going through people, and you can't mow through people. So I think a manager goes after results for results' sake, and leaders realize that you only accomplish results through other people. And so they lead a team to accomplish the result instead of results for results' sake. And, I say doing it no matter what, because you end up mowing through people in the process. That would be my manager.
I love that. No, that is spot on. And, the reality. So then a leader, in order to do that, is going to realize they need to hire amazing people on their team.
That's right.
Because then those individuals, when they are clear about where we're going, what we're doing, what's our journey going to look like, what our culture is, and you've hired amazing people, and you really are, once again, now starting to build that dream team.
Then you've got to keep them. You got to keep them motivated. You've got to grow them and develop them. And that's a lot on the back end. That's a lot. That's why leadership's difficult. It's not easy.
Exactly. It is really easy to be a shitty manager.
It really is. I've done it. I've had them in the past. So that's a lot easier.
Can you have a vulnerable moment? Can you share maybe something you did in the past as a manager that you're like, you now look back and you're like, what was I thinking?
Oh goodness. I definitely I'm going to say I wasn't power hungry. Maybe I was. I definitely had situations where I didn't care about the individual, where I'm like, no excuses, black and white. These are the rules. Like, who cares? Suck it up. Like, no matter what the situation was. And I had a really bad example of that happening that I won't get too deep into details. Someone had a lot of stuff going on, and I really didn't understand they used some language that I didn't understand. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. These are the rules. Sign the write-up, whatever. And I was in a meeting with another leader, and they kind of explained what was going on. And I was like, I had no idea. And I ended up having to go and apologize. So I think it goes back to, it took me a long time to realize, honestly, that you have to go through people to accomplish results. And just because you're in charge and you have rules and you're paying them does not mean that it's going to be accomplished exactly that way. I took way too long to figure that out.
Yeah, well, I will say that it's getting to know humans as humans.
Yes.
And when we take that factor out of what we're doing, then once again, you're back to just the results and you don't care. And so a future guest, Daniel, is one of the co-hosts of the podcast I was telling you about, Make Work Not Suck. And one of their early episodes, they talk about that companies and organizations that are just uber results focused, that they don't last for a long period of time, or the people are miserable, or people don't want to be there because they've lost that human nature piece of it.
A lot of turnover at those companies.
Yeah, exactly, which is so expensive. So, okay, let's dig in. That was a great example. Okay, so many business owners struggle with high turnover. Isn't that funny? That was the next thing we were going to talk about. What's the biggest mistake companies make when they're trying to retain employees?
That you can throw money at the problem and just it'll solve itself. Like, we'll just give everyone a 10% raise because A, it's temporary. B, it's not really a smart business decision, just trying to throw money at it. So I think number one is just like, let me throw money at it. And two, I think it's, assuming they're part of the problem of, they're leaving. They weren't a good fit on the bus anyway. We'll get new people on the bus, because hiring and training new employees is so much more expensive and so much more difficult than keeping your employees. Not even your best employees, keeping your medium employees that are a good culture fit and maybe they're not as good at their job, still getting a new person up to that standard takes so long. And people are the most difficult, expensive, and complicated part of every business. Not getting it right is honestly why I'm in business, because too many people don't get it right. And it's hard. It's difficult. It's not easy. So I think the number one problem is like throwing money at it and then assuming they're a part of the problem and just being like, we're better off without them, and not looking internally and saying, you know what, is there anything we're doing that's causing the high turnover? I think there's a lot of pride in the way of that.
I think if I were going to throw money at a problem, because there are opportunities where that is the right decision to make.
Yeah.
It is what tools can I invest in that will help them be their best selves, right? Yep. So if I were going to try and retain an employee and throw money at it, I wouldn't do it for a pay raise, because people then end up leaving anyways.
Right.
But perhaps it is, let's develop this professional development program that allows you, my experience. And so I started a 5 resume bullet point program years ago. And the point of it is that I think we should all have 5 things we're working on that we're continuing to grow to be our best self. And that if you document those and then you share them with your team, then as they can also say, oh, let me help with this, or I know a connection for this. And then when you achieve them, go on your LinkedIn and go ahead and fill it out. And I found by developing that and working with team members who actually took it seriously, they didn't want to leave because they were growing and getting promoted and loving their job.
This is where, I don't know if you feel this way of like being a thought leader in the space. I feel like any idea I have, now that I have the book, I'm like, oh, that's a book. I have a notebook that I'm like, I have 8 ideas for books. So one of them is a sequel to this one. And I wanted to take this idea of like, could I take Maslow's hierarchy of needs and kind of tie like this misconception, especially I'll say like older business owners have with Gen Z. I just think Gen Z gets a bad rep. I'm not Gen Z, so I'm not a part of them. So I'm not, here on their behalf. I think they get a bad rep of just like being lazy and not wanting to be employed, and just like, oh, they're just lazy. They don't get it. They don't work as hard as we did. They're getting paid so much more money than we did back in the day. And I want to clarify that money can solve part of the problem. If you're underpaying people, sure, you need to give out some raises. But just money will never solve it, because, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that level 1 and 2 is kind of like that. Do I have food to eat and like a roof over my head? Just like safety, physical safety.
Right.
And that's what you're solving with a paycheck, right? Is like, what do you mean? I'm solving needs for them. I'm paying them a paycheck every 2 weeks. Why don't they just do their job? And the bottom line is like, because we're in, the West and our culture in the United States, like 95% of people are not worried about having a roof over their head or where they're going to get their next meal when you're employing them. And so that's what a paycheck is solving. They're looking for that next step. Yep. And that's where they're going to stay a long time, when they feel like they're a part of something. Yep. And they're a part of a group. They're working for a business they believe in. They're working for someone that cares about them. I believe firmly, like, you don't work for a logo. I love Chick-fil-A, but I love Chick-fil-A because of the individuals I worked for at Chick-fil-A that represented that business. And so, I think there's a lot you can do with high turnover, and money can solve part of it, but people are looking for so much more than a paycheck, because look, people can always get a raise somewhere else. They can leave tomorrow and someone's always going to pay more. They're looking for something else. They will stay longer if they're finding belonging where they work.
Yeah, I love that, belonging, because as a reminder, we spend a third of our lives working.
Yeah.
And so why not have all of these extra things? I know that when we were building Florence Healthcare, the comment that I would say to team members is, okay, document management is not sexy. Advancing cures is sexy.
Yeah.
And the team members who got and realized, okay, we're making the lives easier and better for these doctors and nurses who are running clinical trials, who are advancing healthcare. That is what I'm in for.
Well, and what you did as a leader is you provided clarity. You said, hey, your job is not just sorting these documents. Sorting these documents is helping this way greater cause that we get to be a part of. There's a leader at Chick-fil-A, Shane Benson. He's a vice president at Chick-fil-A. His big thing is we get to do this. Yeah. Which I love. That's his email signature. We get to do this. It's his thing. But, there's a video they showed at orientation at Chick-fil-A. That's everyone has a story.
Yep. Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Tears.
Every time I watch it.
Exactly.
I used to lead orientations weekly. And every time I'm like, oh God. I'm like, and the thing is, like, I've been a part of one of those everyone has a stories where, like, in 2019, my dad passed away.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. Like, literally, we leave the hospital after he passed away and we're hungry and we go to Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, I'm looking around on the restaurant thinking, no one here has a clue the day we've had. No one knows. And I'm like, this is why we showed that video.
Yep.
As I'm like, team members, like, you are going to impact someone's day in a way that you might have no idea how much a smile is going to go. Because you have no idea the kind of day people are having. You know, people might be having the greatest day of their life or the worst day of their life. And everyone's hungry and has to go to Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
And so being able to connect that, like, big company vision down to a 16-year-old that's working 12 hours a week is so crucial. But that's where that clarity comes in. That's what you did at your previous job too.
I love that. Well, thank you. Well, and also if you include my 5 resume bullet points in one of your future
there
books,
you go.
You just, like, we heard it here. It was my idea first.
That's right. Yeah, that's your idea.
Just put a little hashtag,
there you go.
Angela. Okay, love it. Okay, so I wanted to. I was trying to decide, should we skip ahead in this or yeah, I'm torn because I have this question about apathy, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into the apathy part because I think that really ties into the perspective the world has and perhaps what we're not providing to this generation that is going to be valuable. So, you know, the exact question that I wrote down is apathy is a growing concern among young employees. What are some practical ways leaders can help employees stay engaged?
So this is, when I wrote the book, I had 26 chapter ideas, and then I messaged a lot of different business owners I know and said, hey, think about your first day employee. It's their first job. You know, give me a list of things you wish they knew or wish they would work on. And so that expanded my list. This one came up every single time was apathy. And so I was like, okay, very clear. I'm going to write on this.
Yeah.
So apathy is a problem because it's not even, it's worse than negative emotion. It's the lack of emotion.
Yeah.
And there's one. I think about the movie Inside Out is so well done.
Yes.
I watched a video the other day of the psychologist that Disney worked with to make the movie good. Them kind of going through stuff, but you see apathy in Riley and Inside Out 1 when the console goes dark. Yeah. And it's like all the emotions are trying to hit buttons, and they said, right, we can't make Riley feel anything. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, animated movie, Pixar. My daughter loves it. I love it. And I'm like, this is apathy. This is apathy illustrated of you feel nothing. And it's such a big problem at work because A, like you said, we're humans. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And if you can't get people engaged at work, I mean, A, it's bad for your business. But B, like you have an opportunity to impact individuals because what I've typically found is people are not usually like motivated in one area of their life and then not motivated in others. That's usually pretty all motivated or all not. And if they're apathetic at work, there's probably something going on outside of work too that's leading to that apathy. So as a leader, how can you help them fight it?
Right.
Like one of my favorite books, and I'll say 2 books, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And then Here on a Mission, Donald Miller. It was kind of his modern take on Man's Search for Meaning. But a big thing I got out of that is that people like want a project to work on.
Yep.
Like it's a human thing of if we have a project that is interesting, that takes our time and attention, it just kind of wakes us up when we get excited. And so as a leader, if you're dealing with an apathetic team member, especially if they weren't apathetic before, and you've noticed like, this is a person who's been good at their job, we enjoy them being here, man, they've kind of just been out of it recently, not really caring what's up. A, it's an opportunity to be a human and find out what's going on.
Yep.
But B, could you set aside little projects that you're like, you know what, this would take me 5 minutes, but I could give it to someone else. It's going to take them 30. But what if that could help them fight apathy? Where it's like, I think about, Chick-fil-A, just 'cause I worked there, where, it's a monotonous job, especially if you're on the same position. It's like, I stand on the front counter, I greet people, I take orders every day. That person gets apathetic. It's like, hey, do you want to go help us reorganize this shelf in the back? That might seem like such a well, that's nothing. They're not going to enjoy that. They might love that. Or they're like, oh, thank goodness. Like, I'm actually really organized. I love doing this. I organize my parents' pantry all the time. And it's like, oh, cool, awesome. Please, make this better for us. So that's one amazing way, I think, is finding a project that takes people's time and attention, that interests them, And I think as a leader to preset yourself up for that is like, hey, don't just do every side project that you're like, oh, it's annoying, let me fix that. Give it to somebody else to do. It's outside of their normal tasks. They're going to be more motivated, and that'll help them fight apathy.
I love that. And I am on this mission. I hate the word delegate and I love the word empower. And I think what you're doing in that is you're not delegating them these other things, right? You're empowering them to have an experience, an opportunity to put their thumbprint on something that they can be proud of.
Yeah.
And I think it's much like, you remember when we were kids in elementary school and we had show and tell and we would come in and show something off that we were passionate about? How amazing was that, right? This is what it is as you now grow up.
We should
have that back.
I have a friend who's a coach who any workshop he does, he starts with an art. He asks everyone to bring an artifact.
Yeah,
I love this. Share about that. And I was like, I told him, I was like, I'm stealing that. That's a great activity.
One of my favorite things we did at Florence when COVID happened and we were trying to keep employees engaged, and we started doing lunch and learns, but the lunch and learns were people taught everyone on their favorite hobby. So we had cooking classes. I used to have a really badass aquarium. I don't have an aquarium right now.
Oh, that's cool.
But I did one on an aquarium. We had some childhood stars that did music, and then we got to pull up and see where they were a kid band and all this kind of stuff. And it was great because it was people showing off what they love outside of work, and think about the conversations it sparked after that. Or when you're like, I need a recipe. Okay, I'm going to reach out to Catalina, or I'm going to reach out to this person to get a recipe or do this.
I'll say two things. You're getting into another big bucket, I'll say, of helping people fight apathy is they need to be a part of a community. They need to be around other humans. And your workplace, whether you want it to be or not, is a community. And so if you're getting in the way of people actually interacting and mingling and being friends, I think you're getting in the way of growing your business. And by providing opportunities for people to connect and be a part of a community at work, I mean, think about like your friends growing up. How did you meet your friends? It was in places where you were all spending a lot of time together at school, at church, in clubs, playing sports, whatever. And work just becomes that as adults. And that's a huge way to get people to fight apathy is if they're working with people they enjoy being around and having conversation about life. It's so important, and they're going to be more engaged. And I'll say, secondly, with Chick-fil-A, my interview to get to the corporate office is for a position in learning and development. And so our last thing we did was a 10-minute presentation on anything. It was just like, you've got 10 minutes, present. And so I asked different people who had done it before me, like, oh, what did you do it on? Because I'm like, this is going to be a mistake if I go in and try to teach some Chick-fil-A leadership lesson to Chick-fil-A people. That's not going to be good. I did mine on how to do a podcast.
Oh, that is amazing.
So I've had a college football podcast, not leadership, since 2019. And so when I interviewed, I was like, this is someone I feel like everyone has a podcast now, but I'm like, not a lot of people have probably done this in this room. And so that was my presentation. And I'm like, that was such a cool interview thing of everyone got to watch. And then you kind of know everyone's little hobby or whatever. And to your point, it's really cool.
Yeah. So this is stamped approved by both of us leaders. You should consider implementing this as an opportunity because it's way better lunch and learn than reading SOPs or reading something about the current economic climate or something like that.
Way better. Way more fun. Leads to way better conversation. In business case, you're building community. It's going to help you fight apathy.
Yep. And I'm currently obsessed with beekeeping. So I would probably do mine on beekeeping or wood turning or blacksmithing, some of those. Now I kind of want to have that as an interview question somewhere.
I want to buy some land so we can have bees. I went down a rabbit trail.
Do you know today is World Bee Day?
Is it really?
Yeah. So we're recording this on, what is today, the 20th or the 21st?
20th.
The 20th of May. And I woke up this morning to all these texts from people, Happy World Bee Day.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah. So anyway.
There you go.
What a cool side note there. Okay. So let's dig into the culture piece and building culture. And I think one of the things that I try and encourage teams to realize that every company has a culture. It just might not be the one that you want it to be. And it's not, it isn't deliberate or something like that. So can you talk about when you talk about culture, especially when you're looking for these young new hires, what are some of the things that you do in your coaching practice to help drive amazing cultures?
To your point, I'll steal a quote from Mark Miller. He said in his book, Culture Rules, I think it's
That's a good book.
Good book. Like, culture is created by default or by design.
Yes.
Your company's going to have a culture, whether you want it to or not, whether you try to or not, it's going to have a culture that feels like something. And so why not create it by design? So when I work with business owners, it's really about, can we distill this down to key characteristics? So one, I think a great mission and vision is really important. And this all goes back to clarity of, do people know where they're going? Like, when they sign up for the job, do they know about your company enough and know what the mission is? I think a mistake with a lot of mission statements is it's missing a mission in it. So
I love that. The mistake with a lot of mission statements is it's missing a mission.
And I'll use Chick-fil-A as an example. Like, Chick-fil-A, I'll say their vision statement is to be the world's most caring company. That would be a terrible mission statement, because how do we know when we've accomplished this?
Right. It's not it's not measurable.
By when. And I'm like, look at the military. The goal is not like, we're going to be, the U.S. Marines, we're going to be the world's best military. No, they have specific missions they do, where, like, D-Day, June the 6th, 1944, we have this many ships and planes hitting Normandy at Omaha. It's like very specific. And so with companies, can you have a really clear mission statement that defines, here's what we're trying to do and here's why we're going to do it? And so again, when people buy into the why, they're going to buy into the what you want to do if they can be with the why. Beyond that, though, can you define key characteristics for your team? I say 3, because if you have 10...
You have none.
You have none. You have to prioritize something, right? So key characteristics, core values, if you want to call them that. But what are 3 things that every single team member needs to have to make your culture better and to be a part of it? And then interview for those qualities.
Yep.
With interviewing, 3 C's I believe in. Again, stealing this from Chick-fil-A, but culture, chemistry, competency.
Yep.
In that order, or culture/character, I'll say, because it's a lot easier to teach someone how to do a job than it is to, them to be an expert and then hope they fit in with the culture you want to create. That's way more difficult than a great culture fit that you can kind of mold. And I can teach. I firmly believe I can teach almost anyone how to do almost anything with a little bit of time.
Right.
So defining those key characteristics, and them not just being core values you put on a wall, but them being something that you actually hire for, you evaluate around, you recognize your team and praise them for doing those things well. You give your team the opportunity to recognize each other for doing those things well and celebrating them. They've got to be repeated and repeated and repeated. What gets repeated is what gets memorized. And, with culture, again, key characteristics, I like to call them core values. Like, they can't just be something on a wall. Actually make them actionable in your business so that becomes your culture. You define it.
One of the things, and the listeners have heard me say this repeatedly, I hate seeing companies with that. I had an experience once when earlier on in my career where my company I worked for had their values on the back of our name badges that were on land, right? And we used to joke about them because, for example, one of them was speak up. However, this company had evolved so much that if you did speak up, you were going to lose your job or you were never going to get promoted. And so it became this joke. So out of that, one of the things that I like to tell people to do is to set on your calendar once a year, sit down with your team and evaluate your values.
Yep.
Like, are we living these? And if we're not, why? Is it that maybe those aren't the values that we now need because we've morphed into something else, or we're a lot bigger, or we have a different whatever. Maybe it's that we haven't educated people on how to live those values. And then the thing that I really love about what you said is recognizing when people show those values.
That's right.
The Lattice software, which is a people management software that I love, one of the things I love about it is you can put your values in there. And then when team members are giving kudos to other team members, they select which of the values they emulated.
I've worked with business owners who have implemented awards based on the value. And like each month, you get the hospitality award because you did this. And you're not just recognizing that person, making them feel special, which will make them want to stay longer and work harder. You're giving everyone else a specific action that they did to repeat, to be recognized for. It is such a win. It's like it's a productivity hack is what it is. And it's a caring thing as well. And so it's not just like this, oh, I'm doing this, but really we're doing this. But that's kind of what it does on its own by recognizing it that way.
And, I love the companies that the awards they give are not like some fancy whatever, but like some silly trinket or something
I love
that
it.
is just like, okay, this is also how we have fun as an organization.
Yeah, I think about like The Office, the Dundies.
Yes.
I'm like, I've had a Chick-fil-A do that. Their version, I forget what they called it, but some Chick-fil-A name with the Dundies and little businessman. Yeah, make it fun.
Life is too short to not have fun. And why is it that at some point we thought, and I think it's because the world is full of shitty managers, we thought that work was not supposed to be fun, that work was a job. And because it was a job, the 3 letters in job are not FUN. And people just forget, like, oh, wait, I'm doing this a third of my life. Maybe I should actually enjoy it and have some fun, laugh, get to know other people, as you said, find some friends. Some of my best friends are people that I've worked with.
Absolutely. So all 5 people in my wedding were people I worked with at Chick-fil-A in the restaurant.
Oh, man. See how your life, those movies and books that are like choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Now I just am dying to see what would the movie look like if you went to the golf course.
I know.
Right?
I have no idea. I'm glad I didn't. No, I met my wife because of Chick-fil-A. So I'm like, yeah, all these things that happen as a result of that and having fun. I wrote about in the last chapter of my book, and I said it was the most important lesson I learned in the beginning of my career because I got to a point where, again, I'm extremely driven. I'm extremely competitive. Those are very good things. I like that about me. But I got to a point where I stopped having fun at work. And I got so focused on what's next, the next promotion, the next role, the next goal. We accomplished something huge in 2019 for our business. It was an award called Symbol of Success. You have to do a certain % sales increase, which I think it was 20%. That's huge. And I was already thinking about how we're going to beat it next year. Because I'm like, we already have this on the bag. I'm already thinking about it. And I found myself just not having fun at work during several periods. And I had a friend encourage me with this of like, hey, if we're climbing up a mountain, like take a pause.
Look at the view.
Look at the view and look down.
And see how much you've accomplished. Oh, I love that.
He said, like, if you could tell yourself 3 years ago or 5 years ago where you are right now, what would you say? And I was like, I'd say I have my dream job. And I got to this point where I was at the Chick-fil-A support center and like everyone does, was not having fun in my role and had been in it a little while and was already looking for the next thing. And he told me that if you told yourself 3 years ago and showed yourself where you are right now, what would you say? And I'm like, I'd have thought I made it. It gets no better than where I am right now. And so I just think that's a good life lesson if you're like me and struggle with having fun because you are driven or competitive to you're climbing up a mountain, enjoy the view because the view you have right now, you're never going to have again. And then look down also and appreciate how far you've come. I love The Office. That's the millennial stamp is I love The Office. And Andy Bernard, Ed Helms' character, says in the last episode, I wish you could know you're in the good old days.
Yes.
When you're actually in them.
Yes.
And I'm like, if that's not have fun at work, and I wrote most of the chapter in chapter 10 is just little stories of fun things I did while being a kid and working at Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, you're never going to have your first job again. Goof off, make friends, have fun, work hard, but have fun. And that's something Truett Cathy was really big on. And there's a picture in any Chick-fil-A you walk in, it's him hula hooping. And he was big on
Okay, now I have to look for this. I've never noticed this.
Yeah, so it's typically with the Our Story and stuff, little plaque things. So there's a picture of him hula hooping. And there's some Truett's Chick-fil-A's, which are company-owned dine-in Chick-fil-A's here in Atlanta that actually have hula hoops outside for that reason.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical.
And a Truett quote is, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And
love
so I love that, again, he set that up and then embodied it, did it himself with different things in Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A's now made that a part of their culture. And so, again, probably the most important thing I learned at my first job was, hey, have fun. Something I would tell team members is, hey, at the end of the day, it's just chicken. You know what I mean? What we're doing is important because we can impact people, but you know what? If it's a long day, it is just chicken. And, it's not going to get, much more difficult.
Well, I think a struggle that we see are these companies that are uber results focused.
Yeah.
They think we don't have time to have fun.
That's right.
And I think you don't have time to not have fun.
I agree. I'm with you there. You don't have the time to not do it. That's right.
Yep. Okay. So let's see. I want to talk about personal branding. We've talked about this a little bit, and I am super passionate about personal branding.
Me too.
That is one of the things that we do at the AGN group is we help individuals and companies do their brand because it is who you are. So, okay, in Master Your First Job, you talk about personal branding in the workplace. Why is this important, and how can young professionals build a strong brand?
So I'll say this for companies. I came up with this recently. So your mission's what you do.
Yeah.
Your culture's who you are. I'll say for an individual, your character's who you are, and your brand is how you're perceived.
Yes.
And there's a big disconnect a lot of times between like, well, here's who I am, but they see me as this. And I would argue that's on you. You have the opportunity to build your own brand. And that's chapter 5 in the book. It's my favorite chapter. I'm very passionate about branding. Started with like, there's just brands I'm a huge fan of. And whether it be like, I was into graphic design in high school and thought I was going to do that at one point. And that's a part of branding. But really, like, your brand is how you are perceived. It's what thoughts come into people's mind whenever they think of you.
Yes.
Like, when I think of Disney, I think about like growing up, going to Disney World and the storytelling, like the amazing Pixar movies I grew up on, and like them incorporating that in like a theme park experience. And now I have a daughter, and that brings totally different emotions of like, I'm getting to watch her go and like the littlest things making her smile. And I'm like, gosh, my wallet's going to hurt because just to get that smile again, I'm all in. Like they do such a good job at that. And so
they really have coined the ability to make things magical. When I think of Disney, I think of the magical experience. You enter into all these storylines, and it's just pure magic.
So what if I told you their mission statement is to be one of the world's like best storytelling company? It's not that exact wording, but storytelling is a big part of their mission statement. And so let me ask you this: Nike. What do you think of with Nike?
Oh, I love this. So I also have you read Matthew Dick's book of storytelling? Okay, he's done for the moth competitions in storytelling.
Cool.
He's like the expert
I think I have
in all
this.
of that. Yes. And Nike, the difference between just do it and do it, the just makes all of the difference in it. Yeah.
I'm
it's
like
don't wait, don't do all of these other things, just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, Nike's a big one I always talk about. The other one is Apple.
And actually, I might have gotten that example from your book if you talked about Nike in the book, because I think I'd never thought about the just do it until I read it somewhere. So maybe I got it from you. Maybe I saw it from you. I don't know.
Just, but with Apple, what are the thoughts and feelings that come to your mind when you think about Apple?
Apple, I think that when you go back in the story, when Steve Jobs was like, one day people are going to have a computer in their pocket and they're going to be able to connect with anyone anywhere. And when I think of Apple, I think of a company that is constantly trying to make it so that people can live their best lives, whether it's via automation, text messages, or a streamlined UI so that it actually is enjoyable to collaborate with. I think they're all about helping people live their best lives.
So their mission statement is all about, obviously they're a technology company,
right?
But they want to have the best user experience in the world.
There you go.
So, and making it easy, where I'm like, I can hand my toddler an iPhone.
Yep.
And she just knows how to use it because it's easy. It's very like, if you think this is how it should work, Apple changed the game with a touchscreen device of like, yes, this is how naturally everything should work, and everyone modeled it after them. And so for me, personal branding is really about connecting like who you are and how you want to be perceived. Because if you can connect those two, and I have an activity in the book where basically, can you boil this down to 3 adjectives? What do you want to be known for?
Yep.
That's the question I ask is, what do you want to be known for?
Badass.
That's right. So if you want to be known as a badass, like how can you do that now in life? And so I have a cool activity where if you're like, I have no idea where to even begin, use our good friends of AI. Like, I'm a personality test fan. I know some people are not. Yeah. I am. I think that it doesn't put you in a box. I think it kind of identifies a box you might already be in sometimes. But more than that, I think it gives you adjectives and words to hopefully connect how and why you are the way you are. When I took Clifton Strengths, and competitive was like a strength on there, that was my number one. I was like, I feel like that's not a strength, but Now that I see it in my work, oh my gosh, yes, I'm a competitive person. That's something I can be proud of because of what I can bring to the table to help get results. That's a good thing. But a cool activity in the book of like, you can use AI to help you with, hey, you know what? I'm an Enneagram 8. I'm an INTJ on Myers-Briggs. I'm a DC on DISC. Give me a list of 50 adjectives.
Working Genius, isn't it? Have you done the Working Genius?
So I'm a certified Working Genius. I love Working Genius.
Well, it's my favorite.
I love it.
It is
It's
my
your
favorite. Yeah.
It's sticky. It's easy.
It's sticky. Also, and the thing I love about it as well is that when I was first introduced to it, I joined a company and they had all done it. And then I did it. And then I did a matrix where I mapped out all the team members and what theirs were. And then suddenly I realized,
This is why
this individual is struggling in this area. We've given them this task and they really want to do it well, but it doesn't align with their Working Genius at all. It was the exact opposite of that.
And you'll see with the team map. So when I do workshops for it, we build a team map.
Yep.
And you'll see trends that happen as a result of that team map of what happens when a team has like no wonder.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Well, you're like as a whole, it's like, oh, there's one individual in, wonder in the Working Genius is just a competency. And that's the only one. It's like, okay, well, we know where there's gaps going to be, and we know who your next hire should be is someone who has this as a genius. I love Working Genius.
Yeah, and I think the thing I love about just thinking about wonder versus some of the other ones is every team. You can't have a team full of everyone who has wonder because you won't get shit done. Okay, and you also can't have. I can't remember what the other ones are, but you also. So go ahead and.
So widget is the actual. It's wonder. Invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, tenacity.
Okay, so you also can't have a team that is full of everyone who has tenacity.
Yep.
Because then you'll never grow and expand and think of they're going to be so focused on getting these little tasks that are already done that so the beauty of having both of those is the tenacity people can get the stuff done that the wonder people are thinking about and collaborate and build something amazing.
That's right. What are you on Working Genius?
I have to pull it up. I can't remember. Tell me again there.
Wonder,
I'm not wonder
invention,
and I'm not invention.
Discernment?
I'm discernment. I'm between my higher levels or like discernment, galvanizing, and what are the other ones?
Enablement, tenacity.
Yeah, and I think the two top ones might be discernment and galvanizing, and then enablement and tenacity, and then wonder and invention.
There you go.
It's something like that. So I'll the listeners, I'll put in the show notes what mine actually is because I have it in the other room. Okay. So I might have a little bit off at the top, but that's basically what
I'm wonder and tenacity. I think it's the second.
Wow.
Second, the opposite of most popular. Second least likely combo.
Yeah, exactly.
It causes problems with my brain because I'm like, I love to be at 30,000 feet and also on the ground. I'm like, I like to do both. But it's just funny. But again, if you can connect like this, who you are and why you are the way you are, and actually get people to perceive you in a way that's like that you're proud of, that's building your personal brand. And sure, that can show up with how you show up on LinkedIn and how you show yourself on social media. Absolutely. But it's not just about that. It really is like when people think of you, when your name is written down for a shift scheduled, or your name's like on an RSVP list for a party, what thoughts come to people's mind? Because that's your brand.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people don't realize that by not focusing on it, it's just like culture.
Absolutely.
Okay? Everyone has a brand. You can either do it by default because you're not focusing on it, or you can do the discipline. You can actually decide the brand that you're going to live through life.
I just did a workshop with a Chick-fil-A team, and I had Mark Miller's quote about culture by default or by design, and the slide changes, and it just put the word brand there. Brands are created by default or by design.
There you go.
And your brand, again, you're going to have one regardless. So why not create it by design and like go out of your way to build a personal brand that you're proud of, and control the way people think about you in a good way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think to be clear on this, neither one of us are saying that you should be obsessed about what other people are thinking about you at all. Instead, what we're saying is, once again, you have the choice on how to reflect as your true authentic self.
Absolutely.
And I think when I do workshops with teams on branding, I'm often digging into who are you guys as an organization at your core.
Yeah.
Like using those 5 whys to dig deeper, to get down and say, okay, this is who we are at our core. Now, if we were to ask one of our customers, what would they say we were at our core? Right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'll use Chick-fil-A as an example. Like part of Chick-fil-A's mission statement is to have a positive influence on all who come into contact with Chick-fil-A. And it's like, how do you get that to a team member? Because that's very high level. But going back to the beginning of our conversation, you put a sidekick that just says, hey, create eye contact.
Yeah, make a connection.
Share a smile.
Yeah.
Make a connection. And that's embodying, you're helping build the brand of Chick-fil-A as like, oh, Chick-fil-A is known as a company with great hospitality. And that's part of this idea of we just want to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And that's how you can get a 16-year-old team member to help you build that brand, is by distilling it down and making it really specific.
You know, I think I heard this on Daniel's podcast earlier today, or maybe you said this earlier today. Oh my gosh. Side note, my cousin, we're working on his brand as well. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And we have gotten into the stream where we'll get on a phone call, and people who know me know I hate to talk on the phone. But he and I will get on the phone call. We talked for 5 hours last night. I went to bed at 4.
I love it.
And so if I sound a little airheaded, it's all Dan Gill's fault.
Okay.
I'm taking no ownership. I wasn't engaged in this conversation
right.
at all. It was an amazing conversation. But going back to the and now see, I lost what I was gonna say. This is great. This is amazing.
Great podcast.
Oh, I know what it was. Exactly. Great podcast. No. So it was that Chick-fil-A, what it does best is
Develop leaders.
Yeah. Did you say that
Yeah.
earlier? Yep. Okay. See, it's sticking in
There
my
you
head.
go. Yeah.
You know, so I'm just going to say I'll give you credit for that. Okay. So what strategies can companies implement to provide a clear path for growth and career advancement?
This is great. Like, again, people will be more involved and want to stay longer if they can see themselves growing there long term. People want to know that when they go there, they're not just going to be stuck exactly where they are. But I feel like this is 90% of people just want to move up. There's a small percentage that are just like, you know what, I'm happy where I am. I don't want to go anywhere. But most people at least want to know there's the option to grow. And so making that clear on the front end is super duper important. We did this for 15 and 16-year-old team members at Chick-fil-A, all the way through, the highest level of the corporate office and businesses that I work with. It's very easy to do this. The point is at any level of employment.
Yes.
And so one, like showing people what you can do there, like, hey, what jobs are there? People want to know. Do people move around? But then really defining qualities of, hey, here's what it takes to get here. Because a lot of times, especially at I work with a lot of Chick-fil-A businesses. And so especially at that level, typically the people who get promoted are the people who are really good at the job they're currently doing. And so they get promoted because, they're good at bagging food. But the job of a leader is not bagging food. And so you promoted someone who is good at one job to do a completely different job.
Yep.
And so as a leader, can you actually show that like, hey, here's what you can do and here's what it takes to get it, and then promote people based on the qualities for the new role and not the old role, I think is so important. Because you're going to set people up for more success. I can't tell you how many leaders I personally promoted because they were good at the first job. I put them in the second role. They're bad at the second role. And I'm like, you know what? That was my fault. Like,
right, my bad.
I didn't really choose you based on what I needed for the new role. I chose you because you were good at the old role. And there's a place for that, right? Of like, hey, if someone's really good at their job, you want to reward them with a promotion. Heck, give them a raise first. You know what I mean? Like, pay them like a leader if you don't think they're going to be good at the new role. But really clearing up like the qualities it takes to do the new job and showing them what's possible from day one. So like I tell business owners to add this in orientation of like, hey, from day one, here's exactly what it takes to move up in this organization, in this business, because your cream's going to rise to the top. Your best employees from day one will be motivated knowing that there is something at the end of the tunnel that's not just ambiguous. They're going to be motivated from day one. And even your lower level employees, they're not going to, I say lower motivated. They're not going to try as hard from day one. That's okay. They still know it exists. And the more you repeat it, like we talked about, like the more they're going to see the opportunity to grow in the organization later on. Maybe it takes them 6 months to realize, oh, I'm going to dig in and be motivated now. But now they are. And so again, I go back to clarity, creating a clear path for the growth of letting them know what's available and getting really specific and defining how to get there.
So one of the things, I was thinking several things when you were talking about that and thinking of your examples of starting it in day one. And I think the reality is there is nothing wrong with spending your whole career being an individual contributor.
Absolutely
if
not.
that's what you love.
That's
right?
right.
Once again, have fun, do what you love,
care about
etc.
people. Yep.
And not everyone is meant to lead other people. Sometimes
That's right.
it's just to lead in an area. And I also think, going back to the difference between managers and leaders, I think that managers sometimes are afraid to allow employees to grow because that employee is so good at that job.
Yep.
And I got to keep them at that job because they crush it. No one will be able to crush it like them. So they can't have opportunities other places. And a leader instead says, hey, my entire organization is going to be amazing if I help grow people into what they want to do moving forward. And then they mentor somebody else to have that job that they had, and they go and crush it.
I feel like I've talked about Chick-fil-A a lot. One of my old bosses at Chick-fil-A said in the restaurant, every new hire, you tell them, hey, I want Chick-fil-A to be a part of your story for as long as it needs to be. And then when it doesn't need to be, we're going to help you get wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, don't be afraid to lose people either, because why not? Like, if they grow and get an awesome job outside your organization, they've grown the whole time while they're there, which means they were an amazing contributor while they were there. You didn't hold them back. Like, use them to their best ability while they're there and be okay with letting them go. If they're going on to do bigger and better things, because what they're going to do is we had people leave our organization and then tell other great people who are behind in their journey and say, hey, if you want to go grow and develop, you should go work for this person at this company. And so they send more great talent because great people know great people.
Yep.
Typically.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Scott, we all know
pipeline.
you.
That's right. That's right.
So the thing that I was like biting my tongue when you were saying this is because when I was building that 5 resume bullet point program and everything, I said to the team members, I was like, here's the deal. I know you're not going to work at Florence Healthcare the rest of your career, right?
Who does?
and I said, but what I want to do is I want to see you have grown so much so that when you go to apply for your next job, you are the top candidate everywhere. And you know what that does? Once again, that does branding for Chick-fil-A or branding for Florence, because they're like, wait, all these great people, all these great leaders, of these things come from this organization. This organization must be amazing. So by growing and helping people and then launching them into their next opportunity, all you're doing is building your great brand as well.
And be proud of it. I mean, we would have like, hey, look what this person who used to work for us is doing now. And to show people like, hey, that means you can use this job as a foundation, as a launching point to do anything.
Yep.
So like, work hard while you're here, and we're going to give you the skills necessary to go do whatever you want. And that's all about creating a clear path for growth, is like even growth beyond your business.
Yes.
Because again, people will still work really hard.
And they'll send customers to you.
That's right.
And they'll send referrals. And like you mentioned, employees, they are your best marketing. Full stop.
I think, talent and HR and hiring, with businesses, you have customers. Your talent's kind of your internal customer of like, you have to advertise to them and like recruit them to come work for you. It's your most precious resource. And that's how to build, we talk about marketing flywheels and stuff. It's like a marketing flywheel for talent is if you're launching talent and you're not just holding on to it with a tight grip and, stifling growth, you're growing them and they're going to do other things. They will send more people. And you're going to have this amazing talent pipeline of high level leaders that won't stop.
No, they will not stop. Okay, let's talk about conflict. Everyone knows I love conflict. I have this desire. It's one of my life goals. I want to write a book on conflict resolution and turning conflict into cohesion. Tell me about yours, because the next section we were going to talk about was feedback and communication.
I love it.
So tell me what your conflict mechanism is.
So my favorite book I'll say on like workplace conflict as a leader is Radical Candor.
Yes.
Yeah, like Kim
That's my
Scott.
favorite too.
I'm like, she has badass in the title. She has kick-ass.
Kick-ass.
I was like, and I love the term boss because of that book. I think it's endearing and nice. And so I was someone who was really good at challenging directly. And not that I just didn't care about people, but I'm like, hey, this is my job to address this. Maybe I didn't handle it as good of a way when I had conflict in the workplace. But to me, a lot of conflict comes from feedback. And so if we want to kind of connect it there, feedback is a gift. And this is on both the giver of the feedback and receiver of the feedback to do this well. It's got to be on both. So in the book, I really write to the employee and the team member of like, hey, here's how to receive feedback as a gift, even if it's not being given as a gift to you.
Which is key, because the reason I want to write a book on conflict resolution is because so many people suck at it.
So many people suck at it.
Like,
and
really?
This is where I'm like, hey, if you're receiving it and it's not being done well, what can you control, right? Like locus of control, you can't control how someone's giving you feedback.
Right.
What can you do to actually cut through the crap and get to what's actually good here? Because they're probably giving you feedback for a good reason. Like there's probably is some issue that needs to be addressed. But how can you actually find out what that is? So it wasn't named in the book when I wrote it, actually. I need to go back and do a second edition, but the WIN feedback method.
Oh, okay.
Same thing that's in the book, but now it has an acronym.
Okay.
So what, illustrate, navigate. So I'll say if you're giving feedback, you first focus, or let me back up for a second. 3 rules of thumb for giving feedback. This is so important before you give feedback, as far as it becoming healthy conflict and not unhealthy.
Yep.
1, assume positive intent.
Yes.
How often do we go to give feedback to somebody or like address an issue and it goes so poorly that we would have rewinded and said, I wonder if they didn't actually try to do a bad job here.
Right, exactly. Because the reality is most people really want to, at their core, do a good job.
You're exactly right.
I don't know very many people who wake up and they're just like, hey, I'm just going to be shitty today.
Right. It's like 1% of people.
Exactly.
And so I think a good rule of thumb is assume positive intent. And how does that change your approach? Going in saying, you know what? Maybe they didn't go out of their way to do a bad job here. So let me change my tone a little bit. 2, praise in public, criticize in private when possible. Because again, when you praise in public, you give everyone else specific behaviors to repeat over and over again to get the same praise, and it builds trust. When you criticize in private, I mean, I still remember vividly being chewed out when I was at Chick-fil-A by a manager in front of the entire team and guests one night. I never trusted that person ever again. Yep. I was just like, trust broken. I'm humiliated. Like whatever
you're also then afraid to go out of your comfort zone because you're like, I might screw up or make a mistake, or somebody might perceive that I've made a mistake and they're going to blast me and make me look bad in front of everyone. And
I was a leader, and now my boss has in front of everyone said I'm doing a bad job as a leader. So now I have broken trust with the team. It was terrible. So I'm like, when possible, criticize in private, praise in public. And then a great rule of thumb, give 4 times as much positive feedback as negative feedback. Because how many of us have had the manager who the only time I say manager because bad leader, who the only time we ever hear from them is when we do something bad.
Yep. It's
just like, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. Here's my one mistake out of the 100 tasks I've done today. And now I'm hearing from this manager. It's not healthy. But if you start giving out, because feedback is not negative. It's a negative word. I do a workshop for feedback, and I just have a black screen with the word feedback. And I'm like, what's your thoughts? And everyone cringes. I did. Oh, I had someone say yuck. like
I want to puke right now.
That's right. And then the second slide is, can I give you some feedback? And it's like, oh, even worse, like turn the knife. And I'm like, hey, feedback's not negative. It's just a response to an action. That's all it is. And so if we start giving out as leaders 4 times as much positive feedback as negative feedback, whenever you address the negative feedback, it's not going to be the only time they ever hear from you is when you do something wrong.
Right, exactly.
And so it's, hey, they're always telling me how I'm doing,
right,
good or bad. And honestly, if you start with 4 times as much and you start getting really specific about giving everyone feedback onto their performance, that ratio is probably actually going to be way higher because most people do a good job most of the time. And so the feedback method, identify what specifically you observed. And this is important because I'll use a negative feedback example of, if I have a team member bagging at Chick-fil-A and they bag an order wrong, it's not, hey, you were a bad team member. You address the behavior like, hey, that order was bagged wrong. Right. Because again, you're building trust. It's the fact. It's specific. It's not debatable. Right. It's this black and white thing was done wrong. It was the action. It wasn't you. Because again,
Fresh Harvest gave me 2 pints of blueberries today instead of a pint of blueberries and strawberries. So they're not bad. They just made a mistake in fulfilling my order.
Hey, the feedback is I asked for strawberries and I did not get any.
My smoothie now has no strawberries and I'm sad.
That's right. So that's the what. And it's got to be specific. Even for positive though, you can't just tell someone great job. Tell them what they did well. And again, this goes back to give them the behavior to repeat over and over to get praise for it again. I is illustrate why it's important. If you can't illustrate why the feedback's important, it's not worth giving.
Yep.
And so I had someone be like, well, I can't figure out why it's important. And I'm like, well, then don't give it. Bottom line, skip it. Not a conversation worth having. And the bagging example, it's if you're a customer, it's really important you get the right order, right?
Yep.
Like we got to get the food right. It's got to,
if you leave out my chicken biscuit in the morning, I am going to
that's
my
right.
whole day is going to be thrown
hey,
off.
Put yourself in their shoes. They just waited 10 minutes in the drive-thru. It's wrapped around the building. Their orders, we're going to mess up, but hey, do they know it's important to get it right? Of course they do. And then navigate the path forward. What do they need to do now? This is what we miss is what's the goal of feedback? For me, it's action.
Yes.
I need either change for negative feedback or please do this again over and over again. If it's positive, something positive they did. And so get really specific of what do they need to do next time. Don't assume they know what to do differently.
Right.
Feedback.
Because if they did, they would have done
They would have done it the first time. That's right.
Once again, they're not waking up.
It makes sense,
this.
right? So yeah, WIN, win. What specifically did you observe? Illustrate why it's important. Navigate the path forward. What do they need to do now? And I'm telling you, you can build a tremendous culture of feedback if you follow the 3 rules of thumb and start giving, again, feedback that's a gift. And like a gift, it's given to a specific person. It is for their benefit, and it's wrapped up nicely. And that's one thing I missed out on as a leader, especially younger, was wrapped up nicely, is how you give the feedback is really important. Because for it to be received as a gift, it can't just be, I took an Amazon box and threw it at somebody. They're not going to receive that very well. But when I take the time to wrap something up and put a bow on it and hand it to them, and again, it's for that specific person to make their life better for their benefit. Even if it's negative feedback, it's to make them better at their job. When you approach it that way, then feedback really can be a gift.
Well, it goes back to the Maya Angelou quote where she says, people remember how you make them feel.
That's right.
And that is part of, I will say what's so funny about Radical Candor. And so that used to, when I was hiring managers, and it is my manager book that I have people, and I'm like, you have to read this.
That's right.
Now, I will say, listeners, if you think Radical Candor, it is bold.
It's bold.
And another similar book is Making of a Manager.
I haven't read that one.
Yeah, both of them have the same philosophies. Making the Manager is a little gentler. I mean, I'm in the badass bold category, so I love Radical Candor.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the reality is in both of those is that you learn how to get to the core of something. You take out I don't like you because you wore a short sleeve shirt today.
Yeah.
In my AC not working in here. No, you get over that and you're just like, no. It is what the action is, what the behavior is.
That's right.
Not necessarily the person.
That's right.
Okay, that's amazing. So we've talked about giving feedback. Let's talk about receiving it. So for the younger listeners here that are early in their career and may not have an amazing leader that says it's okay to make mistakes. I say instead of failing fast, you learn fast that way. So they are in an environment and they're terrified to make a mistake, and then their boss comes and says,
choose them out.
And they're like, but wait, my mom says I'm perfect, why are you telling me? I'm just making up stuff, right?
Oh, we love parents,
right? Exactly. And so everyone loves their baby's beautiful. And so how do you coach those young first time you've never had feedback like this before? How do you coach them on how to actually accept it and implement it?
So I'll say same method. So, but now it's, if you're not being given the feedback in a method that's helpful like that, then how can you receive it? And to your point, how do you get to the core? Because maybe it's being given and it's just you're terrible and da-da-da-da-da. And it's well, okay, there's clearly something wrong. I don't think I'm terrible.
Right.
So start asking questions. What specifically did I do wrong in this situation? Right? And I have a list of questions in the book that you can ask in the section of, hey, but what is, let's get to the core.
Do you remember where it is in the book?
Chapter 7.
Okay.
So what specifically is going on here? The illustrate hey, it's going to sound like a dumb question, but like, hey, why is this important? You don't want it to come across as like arrogant or in a way that's like not helpful, but like, hey, why is this feedback important? Can you, like, especially if you don't understand, maybe you understand, you don't need to ask that question of like, okay, now that you've told me specifically what I did wrong, I know why it's important I do this well, right? And then lastly, same thing, the goal is like the win feedback method. Can you ask questions to get that if you're not being given that? And so to navigate like, hey, what can I do differently next time? And if you start asking those kind of questions that are actually helpful, it's actually really disarming to the person giving feedback, even if they approached it in a way that was not helpful and didn't have good intentions. But if you start asking those questions about like, hey, can you tell me like specifically like, hey, what happened that was wrong here? Like, I know I did something wrong. What specifically did I do wrong? And they're like, well, it was this. It's like, okay, you know what? I did do that wrong. I understand why it's important. What can I do differently next time? You start taking responsibility, because a lot of times the situation is not going to be positive stuff, right? It's going to be negative feedback that you're getting.
Right.
So when you can actually get to the core of what's going on.
I don't know anyone who gets defensive about getting positive feedback.
Right. I don't either. I'll say though, if you're being told great job, it wouldn't hurt to ask what you did well.
Exactly.
So same
that
questions.
you can, yeah, exactly. You know, one of the things that I love in feedback is when you're receiving feedback, we should also go back to that. Always assume positive intent for the other person as well.
Yeah.
And so I love to ask the question, if feedback is given to me, to show a learner's curiosity mindset and to say, you know what, your feedback is very valuable to me. Can we walk through some of these things so I can really understand where you're coming from and then build something toward. And I find that when I do that, the person's like, wait, I already know this conversation is going to be good, because she wants to learn and hear more.
That's right. And again, you kind of diffuse, going back to conflict resolution.
Yes.
You kind of diffuse a situation when you're the one who's, I'm a learner. Let me diffuse this. Let me ask you questions. Let me get to the core of what's going on. And you diffuse it for both parties. And so whether you're the leader giving the feedback or receiving it, you can diffuse it by assuming that positive intent. It's important.
Exactly. And I think also starting off with first off, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to give me feedback.
Yeah.
Because I know you're super busy, and I have this, everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something else.
That's right.
So first off, thank you for this feedback.
Yeah.
Now, I really want to dig in a little deeper, because I know you've worked hard on this, and I want to be able to understand it, and I want to collaborate well with you. Can we walk? And I think it is just taking that moment to also realize that a lot of people are so conflict averse. For the person giving the feedback, many of those people are terrified to do it, right? They're terrified that this person, and they've told all these stories. They probably stayed up all night the night before, right? Playing out all of these things. They're terrified. So you can actually help the situation as the receiver by saying, first off, I just want to tell you, thank you for giving feedback, because it's hard to do. And this is really cool and moving forward. So, okay, do you remember where I'm going to hand you your own book? So I'm going to read a couple of those things that you said, the questions that you could ask. And I think as we're talking about that, I then want to move into the firing a customer type question. But I put you on the spot. How do you feel right now? Are you sweating?
Holding my book?
Yeah.
I'm like, what's funny is I had on my list to like next month to read it again. I'm going to start writing again soon. So I'm like, let's figure out what I did well. And I have a copy that I went through and highlighted, and I was like, I found a couple mistakes already. I'm like, well, hopefully no one catches that. Okay, I have like, if the feedback provided is vague, seek specifics by asking to define the what. What exactly are they addressing? Request clarification to ensure you fully understand their point. So again, go back to clarity. Like, next, inquire about the significance of the feedback. Ask the why questions to delve into the reasoning behind their feedback, ensuring you comprehend its importance. And finally, seek guidance on future actions. Request an actionable plan, what changes are needed or what behavior should continue. Clarify the expectation with the provider. I wonder how many times I use the word clarify in the book. That'll be the...
you should. I'm sure AI can tell you that.
I'm sure it could too. That'll be the second book, is around clarity. So again, it goes back to like, can you ask questions to get really specific around, if you're not receiving feedback in a way that's helpful, you can actually ask questions to get there.
Yes.
And make it helpful. Even if, again, the person going into it wasn't trying to be helpful. Or assume positive intent. Maybe they were, and they haven't read the book, so they have no idea how to give good feedback. And most leaders are not trained well enough.
No, I never took a class in high school growing up or in college on how to give feedback.
That's right.
Zero classes on it. So what happens is we all learn from the fact that there are so many shitty managers out there. So we learn horrible ways to do it and it becomes ingrained. And then we get defensive because we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you now. The stories we tell ourselves in our head, like Brene Brown says, right? And I love the thing that you were talking about for the clarity piece of it. One of my favorite things, and I got this from Brene Brown, was also in this conversation when they say something, pause and say, okay, I want to make sure I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
What I heard you say was this.
Yep.
And when I hear that, the story going on in my head is this. Is that accurate? And then pause and allow them to say, no, Ange, that's not what I meant. What I meant was this. Because then you can get down to what the core is and make sure you're speaking the same language.
And I think you hit on something. It's just a good life skill of listen without thinking about your response. Mm-hmm. Like listen.
Which is really hard to do for a podcast host because...
It is. That's fair. That's fair. But being able to listen to conversation and being okay with, hey, let me pause and think about my response because I want to make sure I was listening to you. Give me 1 second. And like, that's okay. Because I'd rather you have a really good response after, if I'm giving you feedback and you're trying to take it all in, like I'd rather you have it listen to have a good response and the other way around, right?
Yes.
Like if you're giving and someone's like, well, hey, I actually meant to do this. It's like, again, assume positive intent. No one's trying to do a bad job.
Right.
99% of people are not trying to do a bad job. So yeah, being able to do that's huge.
Okay, Katie's going to kill us because we're supposed to keep these episodes to right an hour, and I know we're going past that. So another question that I have is the reality of the benefit, or if you can share any examples of when you had to fire a customer. And I'm all about, once again, going to the reality of everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something.
Yeah. And
if you have a bad customer, the amount of resources, energy, drain, impact on employee morale they cost you so much more money than if you have a great customer. So can you think of any examples of when you've had to do that?
I got told the customer's always right. And
right.
That's not true.
It's not true.
It's not true. It's okay to fire a customer. I'll say one very simple one was there was a guy who came into Chick-fil-A and made a 15-year-old female team member just cry because of the way he treated her. And it was very easy to ask him to leave. I'm just like, you're a grown man. She's 15, working 12 hours a week. What are you doing screaming? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's clearly something that's going on with your day, but you can leave. You know what I mean? Like, we're not helping you. We had another one who is, I say, a raving fan. She came in every morning for breakfast, had a very specific order, but when I tell you, it was never right. And she'd order it the same way. We even tried to tell her, like, hey, you know what? Based on us finally getting it right, here's actually what you're asking for. Order it this way. And she'd order it that way, and it's wrong. And, it takes us 8 minutes just to make her order alone because we have to do something fresh and specific. And eventually, like, she just kept complaining, and I just told her, hey, like, I'm really sorry. It's clear that, like, we can't get it right. I would recommend you go to another Chick-fil-A because, like, we're not going to try to get it right anymore. Like, it was just, like, the time and effort it took several people on the team for that one $8 order that, honestly, because we had to keep remaking it, the food cost of it was, like, we were making no money on her. I'm just like, this is not worth the trouble. And we tried, you know what I mean? Like, we felt like we went above and beyond for that person to, like, hey, can we try to cater to this person? And if not, and it's easy at Chick-fil-A to lose a customer. I think it's a lot harder at other businesses when maybe it's one of 5 customers because they're all high ticket. And it hurts a lot more to lose that customer than ours.
But just as valuable. The thing I love about the balance of this, and we're working on a montage of firing customers because I'm all about that. Because I think also when you fire those type of people, the message it sends to your team is that you truly care about them.
That's right.
Because the amount of anguish. I mean, I bet people would cringe when she would walk in and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to take her order because I'm not going to get it right. Right.
Well, and I'm not trying to brag on myself, but as a leader, at orientation, I would tell people like, hey, you're a team member. You're getting paid, I'll say minimum wage, but low wage for this job. You're making $10 an hour or whatever. You do not get paid enough to deal with difficult customers. I'm like, if someone's being difficult with you, I was like, you do not have to let them finish a sentence. Walk away, come get me. I get paid enough to deal with them.
Right.
I'm like,
I
so
love this.
come.
Yeah.
I'm giving you permission to like not let them finish a word if they're being rude, and come get me. Because again, I want you to feel cared for. I want you to feel protected here. And yeah, I love that in both those situations, it was to protect the team that we fired the customer. Where I'm like, I care about you being here a lot more than that one order. That's silly.
Right.
So I'll do the hard thing. To me, it's the easy decision and be like, you can go. I love my team a lot more. You can't do that with everybody, but with especially difficult people that are making your team's life miserable.
Yes.
Those are the easiest customers to fire.
Exactly. So episode 2, Ann Chow gives an amazing example.
Yeah.
When she was CEO of AT&T Business, a huge customer that they fired. And it was exactly that. It was a customer. Well, you know what? All I'm going to say, it was a customer that was belligerent, etc. Listeners, you have to go back and listen to it.
There you
listen
go.
to episode 2.
That's right.
Episode
And
2 to do
subscribe.
that. And subscribe. Exactly. And subscribe. Don't be part of that 95%.
That's right.
Okay. So can you finish this sentence? A badass leader is someone who does what?
Ooh, fights for their team.
Amazing.
I think that's like incorporating the badass part of it, fights for their team. I think that if you can protect your team, I go back to if you take care of people, they'll take care of the business. And I think fighting for the team can, look like firing a customer in that aggressive sense, but also I think like fighting the care battles too. So my boss in 2019, my dad passed away. And so like I was living in Florida and Tampa. It was very unexpected. Like drove up to Atlanta, up here for 2 weeks, and while it was all happening, and obviously unplanned. I was an hourly employee, did not have vacation, any of that. And when I got back to Tampa, my boss just handed me a check for 2 weeks of pay.
Wow.
And like above and beyond, did not have to do that. And I'm like, man, I will work my butt off.
Exactly.
For, you know what I mean? I'm just like, to care for me that much. And like, there's different ways you can do that. But to me, that was him fighting for his team, of like making it happen like that. And he knew too, I was interviewing for a role at the corporate office in Atlanta. I was only going to work for him for 3 more months. Like I was on my way out the door. And so he wasn't even doing it to keep me there longer as a motivation. He really did just care for me as an individual. And so I think a badass leader fights for their team. And that's a big example, I think, but there's lots of ways you can fight for your team.
Yeah, nope. I love that. Okay. So what is one bold move that the listeners who are listening to the podcast today can do to build their personal brand next? What would you say?
Go take a personality test.
Yeah.
Especially if you struggle with, I don't know how to describe myself. I couldn't even give you the words to describe how I want to be perceived. I think personality tests can help start to give you words. If you're a person who's like, I hate personality tests, I don't want to be boxed in. Hey, just see if you don't have to agree with it. You know what I mean? Find the words you do agree with. Because to me, that's what they're really good at, is giving you language to describe why you are the way you are and who you are as a person, and use that to build a brand off of. And so something that I pride myself on is like excellence. And like I like doing things to a standard. And I want to be known as someone who has a brand of excellence.
Yep.
And for my company, when I hire people, that is one of our core values, is like high standard of excellence. That's not boxing someone into a specific personality type, but if you're not going to have a high standard of excellence, we're not going to work well together. And like, you're not going to represent my brand well if everything's not done to a high standard. So take a personality test, start to get some language around, hey, how do you want to be perceived? Because you're being perceived whether you like it or not.
Yep.
People have feelings and thoughts about you, whether you want them to or not. And so can you get language and then take action on it and be specific of, okay, for me, excellence, what does that look like now? How can I show up with excellence on LinkedIn? How can I show up with excellence with clients and customers? For this podcast, can I show up and be prepared and like not just nonchalantly?
Listeners, he brought me swag. I'm the one who I love to give gifts to guests, and he totally showed me up, like total master.
Not to show up,
love
but
it.
Yeah, so like find words that describe who you are and then take action and actually start controlling the way you're perceived. That's what building a brand's all about.
Yeah, I love that. And also I would encourage listeners to take several different types of personality tests.
Yeah.
Because the words and the way that they convey it to you may really speak to you if you do this type.
That's
versus
right.
the other one, you're like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's right.
Another side note, Christy Straw, who's the episode, I think she's going to be the episode right before this.
Okay.
She has a a personality test that she created.
Cool.
And that's on leadership. And so I took it right before her episode, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this does describe me and all of that. So I think
that's great.
Taking several different ones and then, kind of taking a step back and say, what of these areas are actionable for me? And that can also put words into my vocabulary of who I am, what I need, what I'm passionate about. That's amazing.
I love it.
Okay, so how can people find you?
Find me. So I'll say, if you want this book for free, you can go to masteryourfirstjob.com/free, and you can get a free e-copy of the book.
Amazing.
So again, like you said, I'm big on this actually being something people can take action on and change and master their first job. So I love giving it away. I've said, like, I'll give away 1 million copies of the book if it changes businesses. So it's an e-copy. Also, if you like a hardcover or paperback, like I do, there's a link for that on that same site. But you can get the e-copy of the book for free, and then you get the audiobook for free and the video summary for free. So I'm also on
free is one of my favorite
so
words.
I love it. So you can get the book for free. Then I'm on LinkedIn, Jacob Karnes with a K, and Waves Business Guy. Everything's on LinkedIn now. So like your
and we
digital
will
resume.
include all of those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I will say, one of the things I was thinking about for your book, because I love to give books as gifts.
Yeah.
And this is just a great book for graduating high school
Absolutely.
seniors,
Right now.
college students,
Yep.
PhD students, all of them that are going into their first job. So, this episode is going to be released after graduation.
That's okay.
But hey,
It's
you
like
can
every 6
always
months there's graduation.
Exactly. And you
Yeah.
can always give it to them, like, later.
That's
You just
right.
say, hey, I heard this great author, and you should follow these.
I had some people buy some copies of the book for graduation this year, and then I'm like, there's 6 some 20s in the pages. I'm like, that's a great gift. It's like, give them the cash,
Right.
But like, give them something that can help them with their career too.
Exactly.
Throw some 20s in there and make them read it. The audiobook is right at 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that's me like enunciating and trying to narrate. So I think you can read this mostly in like 3 days. It's a very easy read. Very sticky, actionable. I'm biased, but I think it's a good book.
It's okay to be biased, and it's okay to brag about something that you're really proud of.
I'm very proud of it. That's
go
right.
for it. Okay, it's motivational quote time.
Love
It is a requirement of this podcast. Everyone has to share their favorite motivational quote.
So this comes from Walt Disney. When I was a kid, I said I loved Disney. I wanted to be an Imagineer for Disney.
Yes.
They're kind of like the brains behind the theme park and making magic happen. There's a movie that is not a very popular Disney movie, Meet the Robinsons.
Oh, yes.
I loved that movie as a kid. Do you know, like, the phrase from that movie they say over and over again, like the inventor guy?
No, what is it?
Keep moving forward. They say it the whole movie. And so this kid, doesn't realize it's a great movie. Go watch it.
Yep.
But there's like this inventor, and like, this kid fails at his invention, and it gets celebrated. And they're like, oh, it's great because like we just keep moving forward. That's the whole movie, is like their whole family motto is keep moving forward. The movie ends and they have keep moving forward on the screen. And then this full quote comes up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's from Walt Disney. It's actually so he says, around here, we don't sit still for very long. We keep moving forward, trying new things, opening new doors because we're curious. And curiosity leads us down new paths. And so I wrote in the book, like, I hear the phrase curiosity killed the cat. I just strongly disagree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that at every move in my career and honestly in my life, a new door got opened up just because I was curious enough to like peek behind it. And so my biggest encouragement to other people, I love that quote, is just like, be curious. Be curious enough to try something new, to open a new door, to go down a new path, because your entire life or career could change as a result of that.
And I think it also ties to our whole conversation about conflict resolution and feedback, because if you're really curious about the reason why if you are that, then people they love curious people. It's so funny when we're kids, we said why all the time, and people got annoyed with it. And now as adult, at some point we stopped saying why and digging deeper and getting to the core of things. So being curious, amazing.
I'm so grateful my parents answered my why questions, as annoyed as they probably were. And I've made it a goal of mine as a parent to answer the why questions, because curiosity is a very human thing, and we should tap into it more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for bringing the badass into this podcast. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.